Hey everybody, today we're going to be looking at dividing polynomials. So we'll be starting off with dividing a monomial by a monomial, and then we'll be looking at dividing a polynomial by a monomial. Now this will be similar to how we went through the multiplication of a polynomial, that I'll be leaving a lot of the examples here for you to complete on your own. I'll lead you through an example of each type. So looking at just having a constant on the bottom, having one variable on the bottom or multiple variables on the bottom, and then I'm going to leave some examples for you to complete on your own. So when we're looking at dividing a monomial by a monomial, the first step that we want to look at is dividing the coefficient. When we're doing multiplication, we are looking at multiplying the coefficient. Then we want to divide the variables, so alphabetical order. And the last thing we want to do is subtract the exponent. Now, if the bases are the same, that's when we're subtracting the exponents. If you, for example, have an x and a y, you can't mix those together. They're different variables, so you're not going to be subtracting the exponents. So it's important that you're only subtracting the exponents if the bases are the same. In this first example here, we have 15x divided by 5. Now, following our steps above, we want to first divide the coefficients, and then we want to look at the variables. So our coefficients would be 15 and 5. So we have 15 over 5, and we have a variable that we'll deal with after, which is on the side. So 15 divided by 5 equals 3. And now we have a variable on the top, but there is no variable on the bottom. So these variables go unaffected. So we would just write them down as 3x. In the next example, we have 5x over 5. Following the same steps, we want to address the coefficients first. So 5 over 5. And we have our x off to the side. So we have 5 divided by 5, which gets us 1. And our x on the top with no x on the bottom goes unaffected. So we just write it down. So we have 1x, which is the same as just writing x by itself. For c, we have 12 or negative 12 xy divided by negative 4. So this one here, we want to address the coefficients, which is negative 12 divided by negative 4. Remember, we have to follow the same rules as we have in all the other units. Two negatives will create a positive. We also have our variables of x and y. So we have negative 12 divided by negative 4, which gets us positive 3. And there's no variables on the bottom, so this xy goes unaffected, and we would just write it down with our answer. For d, we have 18a cubed b squared c over 16. So we have 3 variables on the top and no variables on the bottom. Now this one's gonna work out different though, because if we have 18 on the top as our coefficient and 16 on the bottom, 16 doesn't divide into 18. So what we want to do here is we want to find our common denominators and we want to reduce it, so we're simplifying it. So we have our a cubed b squared c, which is going to go unaffected, but we want to look at what's going to be common in 18 and 16. Well, we know that we can divide by 2 and divide by 2, which will get us 9 over 8, and there's no variables on the bottom, so the a cubed b squared c goes unaffected, so we just write it down as it shows. For E and F, I'm going to leave for you to complete on your own. So make sure you're checking the class 1 note after to make sure that you're doing these correctly. Looking at G, we have negative 16 x to the power of 4y over 4xy. So this time we have variables on the top and the bottom. So let's look at how this is going to affect it. Again, we first want to address the coefficients, which is our negative 16 over our 4. But this time we're also going to have the variables that are affected. So we're going to have our x to the power of 4 over our x, and our y to the power of 1 over our y. And we're going to see how this affects our answer. First, we're addressing the coefficient. So we have negative 16 divided by 4. This is going to get us a negative 4 because there's only one negative here. Then we have x to the power of 4 over x, and x is always to the power of 1 if there's no exponent written. Same with the y here. So we have x to the power of 4 over x to the power of 1. What happens is we're subtracting the exponents, meaning you have 4 subtract 1, which will get us x to the power of 3, or x cubed. And next we have y over y to the power of 1 and y to the power of 1. Well, 1 subtract 1 is going to get us y to the power of 0. An important thing to remember is y to the power of 0, or anything to the power of 0, always equals 1. So what's going to happen is you have now negative 4x cubed multiplied by 1, which is really equal to negative 4 and x cubed. We've lost the 1 because we divided it, so we're subtracting our exponents, which resulted in a 0, and that got rid of it. I'm going to leave H and I for you to complete on your own, and reminder again, check the OneNote once you've completed these. Now we're going to be looking at dividing polynomials by monomials. For this, our steps are to divide each term by the numerator, divide each term in the numerator by the denominator, write each one as a separate fraction, divide the coefficients, divide the variables, and then last subtract the exponents. In this first example, we have 4s squared subtract 8 over 4. So we want to separate them, so divide each term in the numerator by the denominator. So we have 4s squared over 4 subtract 8 over 4. So that 4 on the bottom is affecting both terms on the top. Now what we would do is 4 divided by 4 is 1, and s squared on the top, there's no s on the bottom, so that goes unaffected. So you just write down s squared. Next we have subtract 8 divided by 4, which gets us 2. We have a 1s squared. If you wanted, you don't need to include that 1 in front of it. Looking at B on the next page, we have negative 3m squared plus 15mn subtract 21n squared, all divided by negative 3. Now, an important thing to note or make note of is the answer should have the same number of terms as the numerator. So if you have 3 terms in your numerator on this one here, your answer should also have 3 terms as well. Start by breaking this up. So we're going to have negative 3m squared over negative 3 plus 15 mn over negative 3, subtract 21n squared over negative 3. Next thing that we need to do is do each portion. So we have negative 3m squared divided by negative 3. Well, our coefficients is what we address first. So negative 3 divided by negative 3 gives us 1 that is positive. So we'd write down 1m squared because there's no m on the bottom, so the m squared goes unaffected. Now you don't need to write the 1 in front, so you could eliminate that 1 and just have it as m squared. Next we have positive 15mn divided by negative 3. So if we have one negative in this, we have 15 divided by negative 3, that's going to give us a coefficient of negative 5, and there's no variables on the bottom, so the m and the n goes unaffected. Next, we have a negative 21n squared divided by negative 3. So this time we have two negatives, negative on the top and the bottom. So that means we have a positive answer, and 21 divided by 3 gives us 7. The n squared on the top goes unaffected as there's no n on the bottom, and we just write it as it is. So our final answer would be m squared subtract 5mn plus 7n squared. Looking at C, we have a variable on the top and on the bottom. Our first thing that we need to do is break this up. So we have 25x cubed over 5x plus 5x squared over 5x and negative 15x over 5x. Our next thing to do is address each portion of this. So we will start at the beginning with the 25x cubed divided by 5x. You want to deal with your coefficients first. So 25 divided by 5 gets me 5. And we have x cubed over x, which is x to the power of 1. So we have 3 subtract 1, leaves me with x squared. Next, we have 5x squared over 5x. Well, 5 divided by 5 gets me 1. And we have a positive, because it's a positive divided by a positive, so it's plus 1. And then we have x squared over x. Well, remember, it's x to the power of 1. So 2 subtract 1 gets me x. Next, we have negative 15 divided by 5, which gets me negative 3. And we have x over x. Well, x to the 1 over x to the 1. 1 subtract 1 gets me x to the 0. Now remember, this is equal to 1. So what you have is 5x squared plus x subtract 3, and that would be your final answer. I'm going to leave you to complete D on your own, and we're going to take a look at E because this time it has two variables on the bottom. We address it the same way we would the other problems. We want to break it up into each part, so we have the 14x cubed y squared over xy, negative 12 y squared x squared over xy, and we have positive 10 x y squared, and this is over xy. So we start at the beginning with the 14x cubed y squared divided by xy. Now, if there's no number in front, it's a 1. So what we have is 14 divided by 1, which is still 14. And we have x to the power of 3, or x cubed, over x to the power of 1. 3 subtract 1 gets me x to the power of 2. Then we have y to the power of 2 over y to the power of 1. So 2 subtract 1 gets me just y. Next, we have negative 12 divided by 1, which is still negative 12. And we have y squared. Well, notice how they're in a different order here. So pay attention to this. What I'm going to do for us is I'm going to switch these around so that it's easier to work with. So what we have is x squared and y squared, so that when we're going vertically, we can keep track and make sure that we're doing them correctly. So x squared over x is 2 subtract 1, which leaves me with x. And we have y squared over y, which leaves me with 2 subtract 1, which is just y. Now we have 10 over 1, which will leave me with plus 10. And we have x over x, which is going to get me x 0. And y squared over y will get me just y. Now we know that this is going to be equal to 1. So what's going to happen here is that's going to eliminate it. And we're going to have 14 x squared y subtract 12 xy plus 10y. So we've eliminated the x because 1 subtract 1 was 0. So that's eliminated our x in this expression. I'm going to leave F for you to complete on your own. And for the next page, we're going to go through this in class. So please make sure that you're checking the class OneNote. If you have any questions, please make sure you're sending me a message on Teams or you're talking to me in class the following day. Other than that, have a great day.